let's progress up to when I woke up. 2017, November. So where should I start? You know what I feel? Everybody goes through something, and that's what makes our book so beautiful. We're an open book, and we can rewrite that story. We can change the story, and even though things happen to me, things have happened to other people that is even worse. And so that's what makes me me. And I love who I am today. I know me now.
One thing that I pick up from you as you're talking is how strong you are. You're incredibly strong, not just for the fact that you've been through everything you've been through and it hasn't broken you, for the fact that you're so courageously facing what could happen as a result of what you're doing now. It's really, it comes through so strongly, and it's very admirable.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we have Ramona joining us again. Well, not again, for the first time on my channel, but she was on Jexit channel before, and she gave her life experience, but there was a point where she left off and when I was watching it, and she had this big gap from the age of 21 to the year 2017, 2018. And this is the point that when I saw that, I asked her if she wouldn't mind filling in those gaps, and she graciously said she would. And so we're going to bring up from that point today.
Okay, James. Sorry about the delay. My dog she likes to join every interview that I do.
Oh, that's fine. Your dog's more than welcome to give her 2 barks.
Okay. Well, from the time that I left off with Jackson, I had mentioned about my failed engagement and how that was my first experience as a new Jehovah's Witness having a crack, because I didn't expect to be treated that way by someone that had asked for my hand in marriage. Because as a witness, you know that we're supposed to let our yes mean yes and our no mean no. And we're supposed to be the happiest people ever, so, and everything we're supposed to do, we're supposed to do, in an upstanding way. But, having him cheat on me with my maid of honor, who was also my best friend, and um, everything else he did to me, that led to the point where I had to tell him I didn't want to marry him. I, like I said in the other interview, I never did reveal to the elders what they did, even though everybody else knew. But I just didn't feel like I wanted that type of drama as far as being dragged into judicial meetings and everything in order to snitch on them. And at that time, I guess it just wasn't that important to me because I didn't really love him. You know, um, I was just accepting his hand in marriage because he asked me, and I don't know. I was young and thinking that love didn't really exist truly anyway, and this is the way Jehovah's Witnesses do things, and I was supposed to grow to love my husband. So after that engagement breaks off, of course, everyone wants to say that he broke up with me. There was a lot of bullying amongst the friends, wanting to make me look like I was unlovable or not desirable to the brothers, because it gave them something to gossip about. I was the feature of that time. And so, but I was okay with enduring with that type of bullying. But the bullying got even worse. Um, it was a sister who I thought was a friend of mine who decided she wanted to tell salacious lies on me. So at this time, I was going on age 23. So what she did, she organized a gathering at her house, and she invited one of the elders with his wife and some of the pioneers. And so at that particular gathering, they talked about me. Of course, they talked about my failed engagement. Then they lied. She lied on me because she went to high school with me, and she had a very colorful personality in high school. Let's put it that way, for lack of better words. But I guess whatever she did personally in her life, she made it into my story because she was a year ahead of me in high school. So we never interacted with each other until she became a Jehovah's Witness. But she sat at that table and had told everybody that I had had several abortions, which was a lie. She told them that when I was engaged to my ex fiance, that my parents will allow him to come over at night and have sex with me while they were in the house, which was a total lie because my mom, she would have killed me and my fiance if we were ever caught doing anything like that. My dad, he wasn't a witness at the time. He would have shot him. My parents are Southern. They don't believe, in allowing anyone sleep in their house that's not married or them. Even if you're married, they would rather you be in your own home. But anyway, so this elder and everybody else, they enjoyed hearing what a horrible person I was and how many men I was supposed to have slept with, which was all lies. Um, it was one pioneer sister there. And the only reason why I know about this is because the one pioneer sister who felt horrible about these lies, and she had known me since I was a kid, since I was 10. And she told them, she said, I'm going to stop you guys now. That sister is not here to defend herself. And you people have said some horrible things about her. She said, I'm going to need you to stop talking about our sister right now. And that put an end to that.
Well, at least that one person had the moral fortitude to stand up for you in that situation
Mhm.
and do the right thing and not let other people talk about you behind their back. And that's
Mhm.
one thing I do strive to do. It's not always easy, especially with all these stories we hear about what's really wrong inside the congregations. But I do try to,
Mhm.
whenever I can, give witnesses credit where credit is due because they do the
Mhm.
right thing at times and they do the thing that's they're
Mhm.
supposed to do. They don't always
Mhm.
like they like to portray they do, but they do
Mhm.
sometimes. And I'm like to point that out because it's important to give them credit where it's due.
Mhm. I feel the same way. And and then also I don't want to you we try not to paint the picture that every witness is horrible because they're not,
No,
you
they're
know.
not.
They just truly believe in something, regardless of what it is. So when she came back to me and told me this, I decided, okay, I'll set up a, a meeting with the elders because um no one's supposed to slander anyone. So I felt right.
Hmm.
And so I went to the elders to tell them this particular person has been slandering me. And so they scheduled a meeting with this sister and myself. And so we get back there in a meeting, and this we had the two elders. At the time, they called them presiding overseers. The coordinator was back there along with one of the the other elders. He was the field service coordinator or whatever. And so while we're there, I'm here telling them this sister right here, she's sitting right next to me, and telling all these things. And the field service coordinator, he always had it out for me. Um, while we're telling us, she says, because of course, prior to me becoming a witness, I didn't become a witness till I was 21. Of course, I had a relationship before becoming a witness. I mentioned that in, Jackson's interview. And I was in a serious relationship, thought I was married a person. So she decided to bring up my past before becoming a witness. So the field service coordinator looks at me and says, Ramona, you're not a virgin? And I said, no, you mean to tell me you had sex? You know, I'm like, yeah, and he kept going on till the coordinator, presiding overseer, he says, brother, we're not here to discuss this sister's past before she became a witness. He said, this sister came to us because she's been slandered by this sister. And he says, why are you chastising her about something she did before she got baptized?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, so that I was like, oh, okay, because I'm like, this man is he's hammering in on me like, oh, we're going to get her for things she did prior to being a Jehovah's Witness. So we addressed the issue of this sister telling people I had abortions. And while she's sitting next to me, she's like, you did. I jumped up and grabbed her. I choked her. So the elders had to come and grab me off of her and separate us because I was like, I'm so sick of her. I thought right then and there I was going to be in trouble. But they didn't put me on any type of disciplinary for jumping up, putting my hands on her. Um, but they basically didn't do anything to her about slandering me either. It was like, oh, well, go your separate ways or whatever. Nothing ever came of that. And I was like, it's not that, it's just that I felt more should have been done because she lied, you know. And I had people who could prove she lied, such as the people who were there.
Well,
They did
absolutely, they
nothing.
should have done more to that because that's one of their biggest cardinal, sins is lying, and especially when they they like, because I remember in as a kid, they would always be talking about how Satan is the father of the lie, and you know the whole world is this in this condition because of the original lie that Satan told. And then for them to not even handle somebody who's lying in their own midst, that's
Mm-hmm.
the very definition of hypocrisy right there.
It was to me, and that was another crack because I'm sitting here, because I told them I can bring, she lied on my parents, saying my parents allowed me to have sex in the house with them there, because I'm like, bring everybody in. I want to prove I'm not this person. I want to prove she's like, they dropped it. Um, because she was a well liked sister. She was very gorgeous, just like a model. She was like 6 feet tall and just the most gorgeous woman you ever want to see. And most of the brothers had a crush on her. Even one of the ministerial servants who was married had wrote her a letter telling her in as much that he wanted to leave his wife for her.
Oh, wow.
So, but she had a very hateful heart. And so after that, that was another crack. And so I'm sitting here like, from the time of baptism, I'm like getting daggers thrown through my heart. I'm like, this is not what I expected as being a Jehovah's Witness. I thought after baptism, and even though I didn't want to be baptized, but I wanted to be a good witness, I was like, this is not what I signed up for. I'm more miserable now as a baptized Jehovah's Witness than I was prior, and being with my worldly friends and living my worldly life.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so then I started dating another brother. Sure, it never went far because the same person who was my maid of honor, who had slept with my fiance, she decided she wanted to like the guy I was dating too.
Oh, jeez.
so I at the time didn't know they were dating though. He was dating her at the same time he was dating me.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so I I had decided I was getting ready to turn 23. I decided, I'm not gonna wait for a brother so I can start feeling independent. I had a full-time job. I had graduated from college. I was like, I'm still living at home. My parents didn't want to be there. And I said, I'm gonna get my own apartment, you know. And so I called the brother up that I was dating, because I had got accepted for my own apartment and telling him, and he's like, no, no. He says, sisters are not supposed to live alone. I said, excuse me? He said, you're supposed to remain in your parents' house until a brother wants to marry you. But sisters are not supposed to live by themselves.
And
And he
I've,
said,
when I heard you say that before, I was wondering what rule is written down about that. First of all, in the Bible. Second of all, in their elders book, which is, almost as good as the Bible in their eyes. I mean, now, just for context, we're talking about what, the early to mid 90s at this point?
early 90s.
Early 90s?
It was, at this time, this was 1993.
93, okay. And the reason why I asked that is because when I did my last interview with my dad, I actually pulled out his elders book that he used to have from that time that we're talking about right now. So there's nothing in there about that, about sisters can't live alone or anything like that. And to me, that was always just, I knew sisters there was a couple of sisters who lived together when in my congregation, but I never thought anything of it, whether they lived alone or not. Whose business is that? But the person who lives alone.
Yeah, it was okay. They were okay with sisters roommating together. That was good if you had a sister living with you. But I'm moving out on my own, so he tells me, he says, if you move out, we're through. And I was like, moving out, so I moved into my own apartment. And so it was another sister. Now, this particular sister lived alone. This other sister, because I moved into the same apartment complex that this other single sister was living in. We just stayed in buildings across from each other. But she felt she was anointed, so I guess it was okay for her to live alone. So what they did, they set me up, the anointed sister and the girl who used to be my friend. The one that was anointed pretended like she liked me. And she called me over to her apartment, said, I want to invite you over. I'm having a little get together, just us girls. She told me another girl was going to be there and just myself. So I go over there, take my little gift bag or whatever, to bring over. And while I'm sitting there, my ex-boyfriend, the one who told me he's going to break up with me if I moved, and this particular girl who slept with my fiance walked through the door. And I could tell by the look on everyone's face that this was pre-planned. So I looked, I said, oh, okay. To myself, I said, it's like this. So I told everybody, I said, I hope you guys have a good time. I left. I went to my apartment, and then later that night, I get a call from him. And he's like, why did you leave? I said, obviously that party wasn't for me. And he was like, well, he says, I hope that you seeing me with her wasn't the reason why you left. I said, you know what? I said, you really don't mean anything to me. It's just the nature, how dirty you guys are to say you guys are brothers and sisters of, Jehovah's Witnesses. I said, because I don't care about you being with her. I said, but this must have been pre-planned. And I said, so you were a party to it. And he was like, well, Ramona, can we talk? I said, we can never talk again. I said, I don't want to be any part of it. At that point, that was another crack, So I'm like, these people are dirty. They're just dirty.
And you know what the sad thing is with these whole things, when we talk about having these little cracks and doubts and everything, that's our instincts telling us, hey, something's wrong here. We really need to get out of here. But yet the indoctrination we get from the organization makes us override those instincts. And that's what keeps us in so long. I just thought that was a good little side point right there.
You pinpointed it just right, because what was happening is I was having incidents with people. So I was getting to the point where I'm like, well, I'm going to separate the people from Jehovah,
Mm-hmm.
because this is the, in my heart, this is the truth. I don't care what people do. I'm going to serve Jehovah. I'm going to remain Jehovah's Witness. I'm going to do right.
But see, that's why
And
they
so,
also, I'm sorry. That's why they
no,
also
no.
tell you all the time that this is Jehovah's perfect organization run by imperfect people. Because that statement right there, overrides your instincts. Oh, okay, well, I believe in God. I believe God's perfect. I believe this is his organization, but the people in it are imperfect. So I got to stay with it no matter what is done to me inside the organization. And that statement right there is cruel for that fact alone.
Yeah, because my heart was getting broken everywhere I turned. And then I have an aunt. She is also a Jehovah's Witness, my aunt. And my aunt has always had a bad relationship with me because she had been jealous of me since birth. So she moved here and became a Jehovah's Witness. And instead of her being close to me, she became close to all the females who hated me. So you have your aunt also telling people, oh, yeah, my niece, she's no good. And, my aunt will make up stories about me to these people who that only it enhanced their hate for me. And then they would go on. It seemed like they would go on campaigns of how we're going to get Ramona disfellowship. Or, I'm in my apartment, and what would happen is I would go out and field service, come back to my apartment, and the witnesses would pop up at my apartment without, now I saw them in field service. And they would bring a group of witnesses to my apartment without telling me they were coming. And so by this time, I had been just just to sickening with these females. And I look out my peephole and I'm like, I'm not opening the door for them. I'm not letting them in. They're just popping in my apartment to see what I'm doing. And then they would, because I could look out my bedroom window and see the parking lot. And sometimes they would park outside my apartment to see if I had company coming and going. Because they're assuming she's living on her own, we're going to catch her. I wasn't doing anything this time. So, I decided to start dating though. And I dated everybody at that time that was not a witness because I was like, I might be a Jehovah's Witness, but I'm not going to sit up here and be lonely, And I had started working a job at the courthouse, and I was working for the prosecuting attorney's office. And all these good looking men were just coming and going. My head was spinning. I was like, wow, police officers, correction officers, lawyers, So I started going out on dates with these guys. They were real nice. They didn't, unlike what the organization tell you, none of these guys were pressuring me to do anything with them. They would just take me out to eat. They were cooking for me. And at the time, I think I had 10 guys I was dating. So,
You heard it here first, folks.
it got kind of hard keeping that all together. Because one time, I'm dating one of the guys. He's a cop, and it was another guy. He worked as security guard at one of the big, box chains, and I didn't realize I had set up a meeting for both of them at my apartment at the same time. So I had the cop at my apartment, and then I hear a knock on the door, and so I'm like, who's here? So I looked, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm caught. So open the door, and this guy. So I'm like, Jehovah punishing me because I shouldn't be doing it. That's right. So I introduced the guys to each other, and I'm like, okay, so the cop was like, I'm leaving. And it's like they tried to wait each other out until the other guy who was a security guard, he left. And so, I'm like, whoa, that was close. At the time, nobody knew I was Jehovah's Witness, though, out of all these guys, right?
Now,
So when this, uh,
oh, I'm sorry, because
uh,
I was just thinking of something, because this is in the days before we had our iPhones and smartphones and everything. But, even back then, they did have daily planners that you could have wrote this all down in, or a calendar or something. You could have kept it straight.
I couldn't.
I'm just messing with you.
I know I got messed up. But anyway, so I ended up dropping a lot of guys I was talking to. I kept the cop in my life because I just liked him so much. He was there for me, everything I needed, and it wasn't on an exchange of sex or anything, none of that. And one time he was at my apartment and here knock on the door. I'm thinking, who could this be? Because I'm not making that mistake again. It was the Jehovah's Witnesses again.
Mm.
And so while he was there, I'm looking, I'm like, shh, be quiet. And I said, don't say nothing, don't move. He's like, what's going on? I said, I'll tell you later. I'll tell you later. And then he's like, what's going on? I said, okay, I'm going to tell you. I'm like, I want a Jehovah's Witnesses. Shh, shh, shh. He looked at me like, what? And so I waited for them to leave. Then that's when I had to tell him I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I knew for sure he was going to leave then, because no one outside want to deal with a Jehovah's Witness,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. So, but no, I was looking at the dog. But no, he stuck around and everything. And we started dating each other, but it was just secretive, until my parents found out about him. Oh, wait a minute, I'm skipping something. Before I even get to that part, you want to know about my dad, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
How my dad be.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I thought this was all leading up to it, so that's why I was just letting.
It is. I had met this guy during that time, but see, this is 1994 by this time while I'm dating this guy. And so my dad's mom passed away. And so, this was his last living parent, because he lost his dad years ago. And my dad did not like Jehovah's Witnesses. He used to tell them, don't come over here. If they come over here trying to talk to me, I'm going to shoot them. But and what happened is he was at his lowest. And he felt, since my exemplary personality through the little things I had been through, I endured and remained a Jehovah's Witness, even with the bullying and stuff I was going through. He was like, Ramona has inspired me. I'm going to start studying the Bible with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and he had softened his heart because he didn't have a mom around anymore. And he's like, I'm just so proud of my daughter, who she's become. And so he starts studying. And by 1996, he gets baptized.
So you won him over without a word, as they would say.
Exactly.
And I'm sure they used him as an example in the congregation with that. Now, can I ask what month and day was his baptism in 96?
Oh, shoot.
Just out of curiosity, because that's the year I was baptized.
Really?
Yeah.
I cannot recall. It was at the big assembly. So it was summertime. But I can't recall the day, and
Because it was at the convention for me too, and mine was June 22nd, 1996.
It got to be around that time because it was hot. It was during that. It got to be around that time.
I was
because after he got
14 at the time, so
you were a baby.
Yeah.
That is so not right. That is so not right.
But anyways,
well, you guys got baptized the same year.
Yeah.
And 6 months after he got baptized, they made a ministerial servant.
Oh wow, that was fast.
That was very fast.
Because usually they say they got to wait a little while so they could, mature, or, you know, kind of get the feeling, grow into being what it's like to be a responsible baptized brother and all that?
6 months, he was a ministerial servant, you know, and it was like my mom at that time had started adopting kids because she had adopted, let me see, my brother was the last, she adopted my brother the same year my dad got baptized in 1996, but she had already adopted 2 other girls prior to that. So we became a family, you know, she had 3 kids at home. I, of course, was no longer living at home. And so then my dad became a witness and also became a ministerial servant. And of course, it was like, even though I lived in my own apartment, you know, I'm dating this worldly guy, but I'm still very much believe in everything. And we go out and field service as a family every weekend. And, you know, we became so when my dad got baptized, we became the model Jehovah's Witness family. My parents even did an assembly part, you know, at the big convention. And it was like the kids were exemplary, you know, because my parents were at the meeting like 30 minutes before the meetings would start. And so so right now, you know, I'm like feeling a lot of guilt because I got this world. My only Achilles heel to me was the guy I was dating.
Mm-hmm.
So I did eventually introduce him to it. I introduced him to my parents closer to 1999 or 2000, close to 2000. Um,
So you were
no,
dating
it was 2000.
so you were dating him for quite a long time then, for a period of what, 6, 7 years at this point,
When I finally introduced him, yeah.
before you introduced him to your parents. So,
Yeah.
and see I think that's a important thing to bring out too, because it just goes to show the mindset that Jehovah's Witnesses put you through when you date somebody who's not part of their group. You were keeping it hidden. It had to be hidden because he wasn't part of their in group. And so you were scared in a lot of ways to bring him home to mom and dad just because of his status in the community, not being a Jehovah's Witness. And that was the only reason. It's him not being a Jehovah's Witness. It doesn't matter if he was a cop or if he was a nurse or if he was a janitor. The fact that he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness was the only reason you weren't bringing him home to mom and dad.
Exactly. And when I brought him home to mom and dad, I told my dad he wanted to have a Bible study. So, because I was trying to convince my boyfriend to study and become a witness, you know, because I knew I was in love with him at this point. And I was like, I want it for my husband. And so he did. He started studying with my dad. And, but he said he ended up stopping his studies because he said it was something wrong with the teachings. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. By this time, we're in the year 2000s. I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. He said, Mona, he says, the 144,000, that teaching is not true. And, you know, this is something that had been baked in my head forever. And I'm like, I don't get you. He told me to convince him of the 144,000 that would be living. Okay, so then I became angry because I'm angry. I was angry at him for asking me to prove 144,000. I was angry at uh, the writing department. I'm like, why can I prove this from the Bible? And then I had printed off things, and then I threw my hands. I said, forget this. I'm not going to say anything to him about it. Hopefully, he forgets he ever asked me. Nope, he didn't forget. He was like, you got your proof from me. And I was like, don't talk to me. So then I would break up with him. You know, I was like, I can't be with you. You're not a Jehovah's Witness. You don't want to study. He said, you can't prove it to me. I said, don't talk to me. And then I would just like break up with him for a couple of days. You know?
Well, see, what you were really saying was you couldn't brainwash him with the indoctrination that you got, so therefore you had to break up with him. That's what you were really saying. But at the time you didn't think of it that way, but that's really what that is saying.
Well, it was bringing my, even though I had been dating him for so many years, we never really got into deep discussions of the Bible until he started studying with my dad. Then when he started asking me questions about what he heard my dad teaching him and I couldn't prove it, it angered me because this is what I've been taught to believe since 10 years old. So, I would rather say it's something wrong with him opposed to there was something wrong with the organization.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because there can't be
Yeah.
anything wrong with God's perfect organization.
No,
It has to be.
because I had the truth, right?
You had the truth and nothing but the truth, right? So help you God.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
to go to your
Exactly.
courtroom experience, but
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
and that's just the thinking we had. We thought we had the truth, so therefore we already had that presupposition that we were right and everybody else was wrong.
Mhm.
And if they didn't agree with us, they were still automatically wrong, even if they brought proof to the table.
Mhm. Yeah. So, at this time I'm thinking I need to stop dating this worldly man. So I decided I wanted to date brothers again. So I had a friend who was getting married to a brother, and he had a friend. So I went with her to meet this friend, and he was a witness, and he asked me to date him, and I was like, cool. I told him where I lived and told my parents about him. Of course, my parents were happy because I didn't have this worldly man that I introduced them to hanging around, so they felt. Um, so it was like I was giving the brothers a chance again. So this guy, he comes pick me up, his brother. He picks me up, takes me out to eat. And, well, first of all, he asked me, did I like seafood? And I'm like, oh, sure, yeah. And he takes me to Bob Evans. I'm like, what does Bob Evans have to do with seafood?
That is not something I would have put together either. Okay, so don't feel bad.
Okay. So we go to Bob Evans and he's like, you can get a fish sandwich from here if you want. At this point, because me dating a cop, I had been to very nice restaurants and, exclusive type of places. And he takes me to Bob Evans on this date. And I'm like, so I'm like, well, Ramona, don't do that. Don't be that person. So
window washer versus
myself.
Person with a job.
Yep. So I'm like, well, humble yourself, Mona. This is a brother, because his brother is better than dating a worldly man. So then, he takes me to the movies. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to the movies. So he asked me if I like this particular movie. And I was like, I already seen it. He still takes me to see the same movie that I had already seen because it was at the Dollar Theater. So I'm like, okay, so when we go to Bob Evans, now he takes me to the Dollar Theater. Okay. Right now, I'm a very cheap date. Okay. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to see this movie that I had seen on cable about 5 times already. So while we're sitting there, he's trying to hold my hand, and I take my hand back, and once again, we're not chaperoned, but I'm like, okay, but anyway, I'm like, don't hold my hand, I don't know you that well yet, and so he's sitting there, he's enjoying this movie, but then after the movie, he takes me and ride me around town, the town he lives in. And he was a janitor at the college in this town. So he rides me to the, now at this point it's getting real creepy. He rides me to the college but it was during closed season, so nobody was there. It's an empty parking lot and everything. And he rides me down there and talk about this is where I work. And I'm like, I had a ice pick in my jacket. And I'm like, am I gonna have to stab this dude? And like, what is going on here? And then he starts telling me about when he used to, remember, he's a Jehovah's Witness. He starts telling me about when he was roommating with this one brother. And he says, oh, that brother, he loved to watch porn. And he says, one day I come out and the brother was sitting on the couch and he was naked and he was watching porn. And then he asked me to come sit by him. And then he just changed the subject.
Oh,
And
jeez.
I'm like, what? And so I didn't ask him to elaborate on it, but I was like, he just stopped right there. So I'm like, why did he feel the need to tell me this? Why is he taking me to this empty parking lot? Why am I in this car with this man I don't know?
My
And I'm
goodness.
thinking to myself, I only went on this date because he's one of Jehovah's Witnesses, because I was supposed to trust him. So he drives me around this town for about 3.5 hours. Then he drives me by his parents' house. He said, I'm going to drive you by my parents' home. And then he shows me his parents' home. We passed right by. He said, oh, we had to pass right by because I'm disfellowship. I said, huh? He says, I can't talk to my parents. I'm disfellowship. He said, right now, I currently live with a woman that I'm dating. I said, huh?
Oh my
And he's
goodness.
like, he said, but my intentions is to go back to the Kingdom Hall. And when your friend brought you to her friend's house, this worked perfect. He said, because I want to go back to being a witness again. And you're beautiful. And what I can do is get reinstated. And then we can pretend like we just met. And then you and I can get married. So I'm in his car. I'm like, oh, that's the plan. And he's like, yeah. He says, because I really like you. He says, so I'm coming back to the Kingdom Hall, but you're going to be my wife. And I'm thinking to myself, not this shit again.
Jeez.
This is what I'm thinking. Like,
Oh my God.
and so then he finally takes me and drives me back home. And the speed limit at the time was like 70 miles per hour, and he was going 45 miles per hour. So what would have took us like 30 minutes to get me home took him over an hour to get me home. So when I got out the car, I couldn't jump out of his car fast enough. And that was that was the last time I saw him, because when he would call me, I wouldn't pick up the phone, because I had I would just let my phone ring. And he contacted my friend and he was like, what is wrong with Ramona? I thought this was going to work out. I had a perfect plan for us. She's already a witness. I was going to get reinstated and she was going to be my wife.
Now, I don't want to insult myself or my family here, but it seems like you found a real winner there.
Yeah, apparently so.
But, and you know what? I've heard stories like, not like that specifically, because that's just a doozy of a story. But I have heard stories of witness men like this often. How they have no, I don't, what's the word? No couth, no sense really on how to talk to or treat a woman. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that, of course, then there's opposite ends of the spectrum, because some will be like total creepos and do what they did to you, or
Mm-hmm.
they won't even talk to a woman because the upbringing has them so screwed up mentally on how to be with a woman that they don't know how to handle themselves in any sense of the form.
Really? I never thought of it like that. Huh.
Because I mean, you think about it. Think about all the times they tell witnesses, and I know it's not just witnesses, but that's the background we came from. No sex before marriage. They talk about, not masturbating, not doing anything sexual. Don't look at stuff, and they pound it into your head all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
if they would just leave the subject alone and let you develop, rather than pounding this into your head all the time, you could develop a little bit more normally, but you don't, because it's pounded in not to do this. So your mind is going every which way on this subject, and you don't know what to do with yourself or anyone else for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it creates this environment where men and even women have a very screwed up perspective of what dating and relationships are supposed to be.
That's true.
You were getting the normal side of it, dating the officer. The guy was taking you to nice places. He was treating you right. He wasn't expecting nothing in return from you other than your company. Whereas with the witness guys, they want to do all these creepy things, and they want the sex, they want this, they want that from you, but then they're so cheap about it, they don't know how to go about it, and they just come off so weird, perverted, because they don't know how to handle themselves.
Exactly. And you would know better because you were a brother, and you knew firsthand on how the brothers' mentality was, and it was just like every time I tried to give a brother a try, it was some odd stuff, and I have to be thankful that I did wait. Well, I'm not saying wait, my mother forced me, but I'm thankful I didn't give in to her until I was 21, because prior to 21, I had a normal interactions with the male species. you know, um, so I did know that you can be friends with men without sex. You can interact with men without it being sex. When I start interacting with Jehovah's Witnesses, their whole aspect was dealt around sex. You had to, like, even my ex fiance, I had to keep him off of me because he would proposition me like nobody's gonna know. And I guess because he was so built up, he decided to start getting it from my friend. And so he was not only sleeping with her, he's sleeping with someone else too. But anyway, that's beside the point. And then all of a sudden I meet this other guy, and he already had in his mind after one date how it was gonna go down. And he was living with a worldly woman, the one he got this fellowship for, but he wanted to be back in the organization, and he knew he couldn't be back unless he had a woman, because he was not going to miss a beat when it came to having sex. So then, have me visit the hall and pretend like we just meet. And he had it all planned. We were going to get married. I'm like, he don't know me. I could be the worst wife you ever want to meet. I could be a horrible person. How can you just look at a person and say, we're going to get married? You don't know. I may keep a nasty home. I may not know how to cook. It's so many things. As witnesses, you don't learn the important things about people.
No, you don't.
You learn what you need to present to the organization as what a good couple's supposed to look like. You're supposed to go to all the meetings and have your magazines underlined, go out and field service, and reach out.
Well, they don't.
He was supposed to reach.
They don't train you to look for compatibility in a partner. They train you to look for what are they doing for the organization in a partner. And that's not compatibility. Exactly. Compatibility is not about how many hours of service you're in, how much meetings you go to, how often you comment, how well do you dress at the meetings. Compatibility is about two people and having similar interests, similar goals, and wanting to do the same things in life and grow together in that respect, not within a religious organization.
Exactly. And it's just, you have to live with this person for what should be the rest of your life, and I was like, so after him, I still didn't immediately start back to dating my cop friend. He kept trying to date me and hang around, but I just had a conflict of interest because it was like I still believed, even though funny thing is I didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness to begin with, but I wanted to be good. I didn't want to be a hypocrite. And dating him, I felt like a hypocrite. So, it was like I kept trying to stay faithful to the organization and thinking, oh, I'm going to meet that one brother I'm compatible with. And not knowing all along that prior, I had also been marked as not being good marriage material. I didn't know that. So what happened is my mom's friend, um, her husband was sitting at the table with me one day, and we were talking and laughing. and he's a good guy. I love him. But he says, Ramona, I got to tell you something. Because his brother-in-law is was the presiding overseer. And he said, and I said, what? He says, you know why no brothers talk to you? I said, no. He says, you've been marked as being not good marriage material. I said, why? He said, well, when you were engaged to that other brother and then you called off the wedding, you weren't supposed to call off the wedding. They said that you were dating or accepting wedding, at least a marriage proposal for a sport, just so you could date, and that so and then two, I worked full time, so I didn't make ministry my number one goal as far as being a full time pioneer because I worked full time, and it was like, so therefore, when the brothers would come and ask about me, the brothers would tell them, no, you don't want that sister. She's not good marriage material. She's not spiritual minded.
And that's just see, I don't even know what to say to something like that, because like I was engaged before I married my wife to another sister, and I broke off the engagement, and I never got marked as a result of that. I got reproved, because at the time I was a ministerial servant at the time, and I got reproved, and then when I met my wife, my current wife, of course, both girls, the girl before my wife, her dad was an elder in another congregation, and then my wife's dad he's still an elder, but so he was an elder too when I met her. So I didn't have any kind of marking on me or anything. I mean, I didn't date a whole lot of people. I had my girlfriend before my wife and then my wife. So I don't know if there was a difference between, excuse me, the amount of people I dated versus you. I don't know. Or if it's just a simple fact that I was a man and you were a woman.
I think it's because I was a woman. I only dated two brothers. The one I was engaged to, and the other one that said he would break up with me if I moved, remember? And the one that was disfellowship, they didn't know about after so many years.
Okay.
Because he lived in a different town.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they didn't know about him. And so I never told anybody about him, because I only went on one date with him. So, but yet, that marking, them marking me came way before I even started dating the cop and everything. I had been marked from the time I called off my engagement.
Oh my goodness.
But it took all the way until way into the 2000s. By the time I found out, that's why nobody wanted me.
Now you probably missed that meeting where they had the marking talk then, didn't you?
You know what? I'm so slow. I probably was sitting there listening to the marking talk and didn't even think it was about me.
And you know what? That can happen too. Actually, because when you're in those meetings, sitting there listening, I remember all the time how zoned out and I was, not even thinking about what was going on the platform, and how much I know I missed because of that very fact alone. Because when you're hearing the same shit over and over again, you're just going to block it out. It's just like, okay, I heard this already. Don't need to hear it again. And I totally get that.
That is so true. And that's the whole thing. It's like you said, you start blocking stuff out. And I'm pretty sure I was there because honestly, James, I went to every meeting. There was a time up in the 2000s, this leading up to the when was coming out of the 2000s. My mom had stopped going to the meetings at all, and she was very irregular, and I was going by myself. My dad and I, we would go, and so I would not miss meetings. I would not miss field service. I would make sure if they wanted me to go on Bible studies, very few times I was asked to go on a study, but I would go. I tried my best to socialize with the witnesses, because I was trying my best not to. At this point, I had a crisis of conscience when it came with my love life, because I was in love with this police officer, but I was staying away from him, and so, and, I kept myself as busy as I possibly could in the truth, because I was like the police officer, I couldn't find anyone better than him. And that wasn't supposed to be the case. So we get, let me see, through 2000 and 2000 and let me see, 2000, because I moved in my own home in 2006. Um, let's come up. I'm not going to come all the way up to 2017, but there were more cracks. I had this one sister. We had, you remember when they started breaking up congregations?
Mm-hmm.
Where did they do? Where okay, I went to a predominantly Black congregation. We may have one or two white people in our congregation. So we had Brother Shepherd. I don't know. Did you ever hear of Brother Shepherd?
No.
Okay. Well, he was a well-known brother though, but he came to our he traveling overseer. He came to our halls and he broke our halls up. He took us and he put us in a white congregation. And because the white congregation was too white, the Black congregation was too Black. And so when we got over, I never experienced racism until I got to this Kingdom Hall. Because I didn't think racism existed in the Jehovah's Witnesses, because we had a couple of white people and it was like we were family, so we thought. So the first thing, the elders, the presiding overseer, coordinator's wife, she comes up to me, to welcome me to their hall and everything. And she says, "So Ramona, how did it feel growing up in a neighborhood with prostitutes, drug addicts, and gang members and everything?" And I looked at her. I said, "I didn't grow up in that neighborhood." I said, "What are you talking about?" She says, "Well, you know, you went to the East congregation and around there, that's what you guys have, crackheads and everything." I said, "No, we don't."
Oh my goodness.
I said, "What would make you ask me how did it feel grow?" I said, "I did not grow up like that." And she walked off from me, because I guess I didn't answer like she thought I should have, because she assumed that I grew up in the ghetto.
And she's
And
basing that
because
off your skin color purely, I'm sure, wasn't she?
she was,
Yeah.
she was, and I grew up in a Black neighborhood, but it was a nice Black neighborhood I grew up in. I
Right.
grew up just like everybody else. And so, but at this time when she asked me that, my parents had moved in a white neighborhood where they were only Black people there, and I was living in an all white neighborhood. So, so oh, they didn't want us to go. Like when we go on field service, you could tell they would struggle with where to take the Black people. It wasn't a lot of us, but what they did, they would have a certain elder. I guess they would have conversations about it, and they would pick like business areas that we could go, to be okay with being integrated. But when it came to go on Bible studies, they wouldn't take any of us on Bible studies with them. And they would tell us that, oh, this person that we study with, they live in a neighborhood where they're not used to your kind. So we don't want to shock them.
God, I hate that expression right there. Your kind. That is just so terrible. So terrible.
Yeah. So they said they had a hard time figuring out what to do with us, because especially when it came to the field service arrangement. And so we eventually ended up going back to an integrated this time, because our Black congregation had gotten disbanded. So we went to an integrated congregation where there was a mixture of races, because we felt better being with a mixture of white, Mexican, Black, and to get away from the racism at the other Kingdom Hall.
Jeez, that's terrible.
Another crack.
Yeah, it is. That sounds like a huge crack right there. But I want to ask you something too. Going back to your father. So, and this, I know this is going to go back just a little bit, but when he got baptized, became a ministerial servant and everything, did his attitude change any? Like, did he become more harsh? Did he become less harsh? Things like that. Did he treat you differently in any way after that?
No, my dad, he's never been a very harsh person, and he still isn't. And he's a more reasonable person, which is a defect for him in the organization. Um, the only thing, he became less attentive to his family because he was so concerned about being a yes man for the congregation
Mm-hmm.
that everything they wanted him to do, he wouldn't say no to them. Even if it came to the point where we as a family, if we needed him, they came first. Anything they needed, if the brothers needed him to take out the group, we could be like, Dad, I need you to take me to the hospital. I broke my leg. Well, I got to take the group out first. You know, it was just like, or I got to get, I got to do a talk with brother so and so. He would never say no.
Gotcha.
And that was the problem we have with him. He was not a tyrant. My dad has never had a tyrant type of personality. So my mother is the tyrant. Now, when he became a ministerial servant, she's the one who like doubled down because she wanted my dad to become an elder. She told me, she was like, she called me on the phone and she was like, this worldly man that you brought for your dad to study with, I need you not to see him anymore. Your dad needs to become an elder and you need to get your act together. You need to date brothers. And so even though I was living in my own home, she was telling me what I should do, and I'm going to need you to start pioneering. I said, wait a minute, I work full time. Well, you're going to have to find some time out to auxiliary pioneer, because we need to make your dad look good because I want him to become an elder because she wanted to be an elder's wife.
Now, did your mom pioneer?
No, never.
My first question would be, well, why don't you pioneer, Mom?
It was.
Oh, good.
I told her, I said, first of all, Mom, I said, I don't live in your house. I said, you need to be worried about your kids that you have there. Second of all, I've never seen you pioneer not one day in your life. I said, if you want to make him look good, you sign up for the pioneer list because you don't have a job. She went off on me. She was mad. She said, how dare you? I'm your mother. You don't tell me. I said, I don't live with you. And she told me she wanted a key. She wanted a key to my house because she wanted to come in when she wanted.
No.
And I told her, no, you're not getting a key to my house. Because she was dead set on wanting this elders. She wanted to be part of the elite club of being an elder's wife. And at that point, she convinced my baby sister. Well, this is the oldest baby sister. She got baptized in 2007 because my mother made her get baptized so that it could look good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my sister at the time, she was 17. Yeah, she was 17 when she got baptized. And so after my sister gets baptized, my mom immediately moves her in the house with me, unbeknownst to me. My sister asked to spend the night, and I told her she could spend the weekend. And my mom packed all her clothes and sent them to my home. So I was going to put my sister in the street, but I'm like, she just got baptized. But my mother was afraid that now that she was baptized, as she was living under their roof and did something, it would reflect bad on them.
Oh my goodness.
So if something was to happen and my sister did something, I would carry the bulk of making it look bad that I allowed it to go to my house, which eventually did happen. Because 7 months after my sister's baptism, she never went back to the hall. She ended up moving in with her boyfriend, who at the time was 43. My sister was 17. We didn't know where my sister was, and but all this happened on my watch, because if it had happened on my dad's watch,
Mm-hmm.
the
Well,
circumstances.
well, I mean, we all know how Jehovah's Witnesses are about appearance and how
Exactly.
everything has to appear to be perfect from the outside and to everybody else, so that way they look good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Well, let's see what it was. It's like after my sister got baptized, my mom realized she was still having problems with my sister because she was getting these secret phone calls. And my mom listened to the voice messages. And see, my mom still wanted to be an elder's wife. So that's the reason why my sister got put in my house, because she knew something was coming down the pipeline, which I didn't know. And so by moving her over here the way she did, it was to take the heat off my dad, because she thought it would still lead to him becoming an elder, which, he was able to maintain his position as ministerial servant because my sister was living with me when the problems began. So being okay, now not only am I marked, now my sister moves in with me and start having issues, and running away from home and little. So it not only did it basically reflected right back on me. It was like, you see what happened when her sister moved in with her? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She was okay until she moved in with her big sister. So now it's like something's questionable going on with Ramona, because her sister would, but all in all, my sister was having a problem before she got baptized.
Well,
After she
obviously.
got baptized, exactly. But it all went back on, it's me. So then my mom gets my baby sister baptized at 16. So she gets baptized, right? So, but my baby sister, she took to it like a fish in water. She loved being a witness when she was 16. She was pioneering, and she just loved everything about it. We didn't start having problems out of my sister until she graduated from high school. And but even though it was, but it still reflected back on me because of the first sister. So it's still, I had something to do with. My sister got pregnant, got disfellowship, so at this point it was like I was the bad influence, and I didn't know any of this is going on, but I'm like, I had nothing to do with it, but it was, I could tell people. When my sister got disfellowship, I started being treated like I was disfellowship. I would come to the hall, nobody would speak to me, because a lot of them would hear that Gill girl got disfellowship, and they automatically assumed it was me anyway, because they had been waiting for my disfellowship for a long time in the first place. So I of course would not get invited places, and then I had one time someone saw someone talking to me, and I had been told, "Oh, I thought you were disfellowship," and I would have to say, "No, that's my baby sister." Because they would wonder why were people talking to me.
Right, right. And that's just so crazy how they set that up to make it look like you, and how people are really, you'd think people would be smarter than that to know, hey, these girls weren't having these problems because they moved out of their parents' house, that these problems started long before that. But no, they have a way of manipulating the story to throw it all on you, make you look like the bad guy, when it was the way they're being raised, they're being treated at home, and all that contributes to what they ended up doing. Them moving out was them getting the freedom to go ahead and do what the hell they wanted away from their parents.
That's true.
Not because of you.
My mom was a real tyrant, because one time I can remember when my oldest baby sister was living at home, I walked in on my mom choking her. I don't remember what was the cause of it, but I went into my mom's, because I've always had access to go in anytime I wanted to. So I walk in, I hear my sister screaming. So I go to her where the screaming is. And my mom has my sister pinned up against the wall, and her hands, and her feet were dangling because my mother's taller than my sister. My sister's 4 feet 11, and my mom is like 5'7". And so, she's like hand around her neck, and my sister's screaming, slime everywhere and everything. And I said, stop, stop. I'm screaming, stop, stop. And she's like, Mona, go home. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I said, stop choking her. And she's like, you don't know what I go through with her. I said, I don't care what it is. Stop choking. She said, go home. I said, I will not. And she let my sister go. And so, and then she said, you can go home. I said, I'm not leaving. I said, I'm not leaving without her. Because I just couldn't understand, no matter what a person does, a child does, there's no need to be choking your child.
No, especially picking them up by the neck off the ground, choking them. That's child abuse,
Yeah.
period.
Oh, I never mentioned all the child abuse we went through. My mom would say today she never abused her kids, but I was a victim of abuse. And my sister, especially the one that's the oldest baby sister, she was abused. Now, my 60-year-old sister, she was never really touched. And my brother was never really touched. But we took, my sister, I remember she put my sister in a trash can one time. This is when my sister was like 5. Uh, she, I forget what she was mad at this little 5-year-old for, but she put her in the trash can and put the lid on it and sat on the trash can and told my sister while she was in there, this is what you are, you're trash.
Oh my goodness.
And so at the time, I was living at home with my parents. I walked out and I'm like, get off the train. I'm hollering at my mom. She tells me go in the house. And my dad was not a witness at this point because I'm back in time now. And I told my dad, I said, look, tell her to get off that trash can, let that baby out the trash can. I said, if you don't, I said, I'm calling the police. I said, and what you think it's going to look like with you being a probation officer and her being one of Jehovah's Witnesses? I said, you want that to hit the news? Then my dad got up and went and, made my mom let her out the trash can.
It's really sad when the children have to be more reasonable and more responsible than the parents.
Exactly.
And that is just a really sad situation that you had to be more of a parent than your parents were to you.
Yeah. Because people will ask me now today, why, they wonder, why did I let my mom make me get baptized? I was terrified of this woman because even as a kid, I had been beat, and my mom, if she would walk up, if she got too close to me, and this went into the adulthood, she would get too close to me, I would jump like this, just her coming near me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know if she would come down and slap me for whatever reason. I was like, is she going to hit me? It didn't take until I may have been into my 30s when I stopped flinching.
And that right there is a huge sign of abuse. If you flinch just because of your mother coming too close, that is a huge sign of abuse right there.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's just terrible.
It was a doozy of a life, but anyhow, so we come back up to 2015 was another. I think this is when that crack got real big and became a hole in my belief of Jehovah's Witnesses. I ended up injuring myself and had to have knee surgery. And during the time I had knee surgery, they found out my hemoglobin was only a 4. And the doctor told me, which I knew I wasn't feeling good because I was having heart palpitations and I couldn't breathe. And every night I would go to bed, I thought I was dying, didn't know what was wrong with me. And I had told my mom that I'm having problems breathing. I even had gone to doctors and they wouldn't say, they told me I was depressed. I said, no, I can't breathe. My heart is hurting. And so I told my mom told me it was because I wasn't going out in field service enough. And I need to attend the meetings more because at this time I started slacking off. because I was feeling so bad, and I was so tired. And like I said, my hemoglobin was a 4. So the doctor tells me I need a blood transfusion. And so I'm like, I'm not getting a blood transfusion. He said, you're gonna die. I said, I'm thinking he's just being extreme. He said, you need to go to the hospital right now. You need a blood transfusion. I'm like, no. He said, and so I went and got me some iron pills, not knowing how to take them. But over the weekend, I took some iron pills, trying to feel better. And I scheduled me an appointment with the doctor's office, telling them that this time when I was told it was January of 2015. And I called my doctor's office, telling them what the surgeon that was going to do my surgery told me. And they said, well, we cannot get you into a doctor until like way up in July of 2015. At this point, I'm like, what do you mean July? I could be dead by then because I don't know why I'm bleeding. I'm anemic. And so the cop guy that I didn't want to date, he came to the house one day and I'm sitting there, and at the time, because I couldn't breathe, I started excessively coughing. My oxygen levels were low and I couldn't stop coughing. He took me to the walk-in emergency because he was like, you look bad, you look tired, you won't stop coughing, something's wrong with you. And I'm like, I'm not going. He said, you're going. So I go to the walk-in, and the doctor is there. He tells me my oxygen levels are extremely low, almost 0. And then he puts me on prednisone, the steroid, in order to give me some, for my oxygen. Then that doctor agreed to see me. Once he agreed to see me, he got my medical records. He gave me a hematologist. So they immediately wanted me, because I told him I still wasn't going to get a blood transfusion when he saw my levels. And so the hematologist had a conversation with me. Was like, you really need a blood transfusion. He said, you don't have any blood going to your veins. My eyes were like super milky white. My hair was falling out. It was just everything that went with being extreme anemic was happening to me. My fingers were blue. And he was like, well, since you won't get a blood transfusion, we can conservatively try to save you. And so they put me on an extreme regimen of iron replacement. Then plus I had to eat certain foods, and I did it. And eventually I did get my iron levels back up. My hemoglobin came back up. My cells started back to growing, right? And so, but I almost died in 2015. I had the surgery for my knee also during that time. I couldn't walk for 3 months. So at that time, I wasn't going to the Kingdom Hall at all, because I was trying to live. Not only was I anemic, extreme anemic, plus I'm an invalid. And then I sit here during these 3 months, not one witness called me, not one elder checked on me. My heart started breaking. I was telling my parents, I said, why won't anybody contact me? And my mom said, oh, you don't want them coming over. They'll bug you if it did. I said, I do want them to bug me. I have no food in my house. I said, I want somebody to check on me. And, because every time my mom would get sick or do anything, they would be cooking food for her, doing everything for them, helping them out. When my dad had surgery, they were helping them out. I had surgery. My phone did not ring once. So I went 3 months. During the 3rd month, I started, because I was on this iron replacement therapy and everything, doing things, but I had no food. I got down to just to the point where I think I only had rice in the house. I was eating rice. Even my parents didn't bring me food. My mom didn't come see me. So I got on the crutches and I got in my car and I took myself to the local Kroger's and slowly went around Kroger's trying to get me some food together, because I was starving. And it was a sad moment because I couldn't believe it. I said, nobody. So then when I eventually went back to the hall that 4th month, the first thing the elder came to me and told me is that I had been inactive in field service.
Well, no crap, Sherlock.
James, I was floored. I said, what? He said, Ramona, you've been inactive in field service. I said, do you know what has happened to me?
Jeez.
I said, no, you don't know what's happened to me because you never checked on me. I said, I couldn't walk for 3 months. I was almost dead.
God.
And do you think he cared? He just looked at me and laughed and walked off and said, make sure you put your field service time in.
Oh my God.
He said, I put a few hours in for you while you were inactive, just so you wouldn't be inactive.
Jeez.
So at that meeting, I sat there. I didn't hear a word that was being said there. That there really was like, all he cared about is my inactivity. And even when I told him about not checking on me and I could have died, he laughed at me. Then, when I was walking to my seat, one of the sisters in front of everybody screams out, Ramona, where you been? You ain't been at the meeting, just real ghetto. Just
oh God. Real obnoxious too.
Yes, I looked at her and I got so angry. I was just so angry at this meeting. And I went home and I said, I'm done. This was 2015. I said, I don't want to go back to the Kingdom Hall. So that's when my meetings really start slacking off. And I was like, I'm not going to go to the meeting through the week. I'll just go on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
And I had already stopped going out field service in 2014 because I was sick. Didn't know why, but I was really sick. So I stopped going in. And then, and so I slacked down to doing every Sunday, I would go to the meeting. And each time I go to the meeting, somebody would say something inappropriate to me about meeting attendance or something, or try to front me. And then it just got to the point where I said, I don't want to go at all. So I started calling. You remember they had to call in where you could call the number?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So So I started calling because, at this time I'm still sick because I'm still trying to rebuild my hemoglobin because it took me longer than it should have. It took me over a year to get my hemoglobin levels up to normal, because of how extremely anemic I was. So I got away with it because of my sickness of calling in all the time. And I stopped going to the meetings in 2015, 2016. Then I would go to the meeting maybe once a month. And then, by 2017, I was still a once a month, meeting attender. And so then that's when we come up to 2017 when I told you about the Australian Royal Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting at work, and because I've always worked at home, so I'm sitting at work and I had to look up something for a case I was working on. I don't know how or why it ended up to the Australian Royal Commission. From what I cannot tell you what led me to it, but I see it coming up with Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm like, oh wow, this should be a good, a good
now
YouTube video.
So, okay, you saw it on YouTube. That's what I was going to ask you. Where did you originally see this?
YouTube.
And
YouTube.
Yeah, me too. Because in my story of waking up, I was on YouTube a lot because I was having car issues, and I had never looked up anything ex-Jehovah Witness related or Jehovah Witness related for that matter, period, on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But that, in a way, that's what kind of scares me about technology. But at the same time, it's awesome because all of a sudden I started seeing these videos for XJWs and stuff pop up onto my suggested feed. Nothing that I subscribe to or nothing yet. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. So some of those videos, the titles of them and stuff piqued my curiosity. I started watching them and clicking off of them because, it's apostate material, shouldn't be watching it. But then the little bit I saw was making sense. So I started going back watching more. And that's when I came across like Lloyd Evans, Kim and Mikey, Susan Gaskin, all those YouTubers, and then found out about the Australian Royal Commission. And I watched that thing like it was a porno movie. I couldn't put it down. Sorry, best analogy I could think of off the top of my head.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
You know, and I was fortunate because I had a job at the time where they didn't care if what I listened to or watched while I worked. I'm a welder, so I had my phone up on my toolbox at my work. I had no other Jehovah's Witnesses where I was working at the time. So I had that up there, and I watched all 8 days of that on YouTube within like a couple days.
Wow.
And
binge watched.
Oh yeah, big time. And I watched it twice because at first I watched pieces of it and then I watched the entire thing. And after that, I'm just like, it was that I was already waking up journey, but then it was just like, boom, that light went on and I'm like, I've got to get out of this. That's how the Australian Royal Commission was for me. What was that like for you?
Well, when I watched it, I got pissed because first I'm seeing them lying about the disfellowshipping process.
Yep.
Because I have myself shunned so many of my friends because they have been disfellowshipped or somebody who disassociate. And they sat up there talking about normal relationships continue and how we as witnesses, they can still talk to people. That attorney for the Jehovah's Witnesses that was speaking first. And he was talking about that. And I'm like, he's lying. Then talking about how normal, because my sister had just been disfellowshipped, my baby sister, and talking about how normal family ties continue. And I'm like, no, my sister was put out when she was pregnant and had nowhere to live. And, my mom shunned her the most out of everybody. And I'm like, they're lying. And, I'm like, we're not supposed to lie. We're supposed to be bold faces, carry on, and we're supposed to be bold in the, faces of our oppressors. Then you get Jeffrey Jackson sits up there. And he just when he said that it would be about us being the only true religion. How did he
said it would be presumptuous of us to say that we're the only true religion.
That did it for me. That was it.
See, what really got me that was a big piece of it too. The part you were talking about them lying about the disfellowshipping. Remember the part when they talked about if you go to a person's home who hasn't been coming to the meetings for a while and they have a Christmas tree up and whatever because they're now celebrating the holidays, and how would you disfellowship them or shun them? And they started saying no, that they wouldn't do that. I'm like, that's a bunch of bullshit. I mean,
that's a lie.
I grew up with an elder dad my whole life. I know that's a lie. That is just, any Jehovah's Witness would know that's a bold-faced lie. That person's not going to be shunned or disfellowshipped for that, even though they haven't been going to the meetings. And then of course Jeffrey Jackson getting up there too, and I'm like, okay, he's supposed to be one of our governing body members, supposed to be, the overseer of everybody's spirituality all over the world for Jehovah's Witnesses, God's one true organization. And he's up here lying when they tell you that you need to stand firm, you need to, speak the truth, you need to make a bold witness, and then especially that year that I snapped out of it in 2018, they had that convention, Be Courageous. And to have seen that, I saw all that before I went to the convention that year. That was my last convention, 2018.
Wow.
And at that point, at that convention, I was fully awake, hadn't come out to my wife yet about it. So it was that I was there, I was awake, but yet the videos and the fear mongering that they put into those videos with the armed soldiers coming after the witnesses and stuff, like they like to describe, it was such a mixed bag of feelings at that point, because there's that one part of you that knows this is all bullshit, and then there's that other part of you that still feels the indoctrination deep inside you. And it was just it was just a weird roller coaster. Now I knew I wasn't going to go back anyways, period, to the organization despite that, but just that feeling that it made you feel through that, it was just terrible.
Well, the thing is that like I said, that woke me up there. By the time 2018 rolled around, I don't know if you remember, we went to the Kingdom Hall. We had a January watchtower. The January watchtower alluded that 2018 was going to be the end of the world. Do you remember that?
No,
that's when they was telling us. You probably zoned out. They were in that magazine. They were alluded. That's when they started pushing the go bags and telling us that this could. I know the comments were like, "This is our last year, possibly being here on this earth with this wicked system of things, because Jehovah's bringing it all to an end." And they were making, I wish I could find that watchtower. I really do. Because by that time, when I'm sitting here after seeing, go ahead on.
I was going to say, you said it was the January watchtower?
I believe it was.
Was it, did they have the study? See, at that point in my life, since I married my wife, basically, we were never super regular at meetings anyways. From the time I got married. So I could have missed the meeting. And even if I did go, in January 2018, I had my third child by then. And so we had a little kid at the meetings, didn't pay attention a lot, and never studied the magazines. So there was a lot going on, more than just me not paying attention while there. I either wasn't there, or I hadn't studied it, or I was being distracted by my kid. There was just so much.
I understand.
Other than that. So what I'll try to do is, maybe if you can find it, please send it to me, and I'll show it up on the screen when I edit the video, and then I'll also try to look for it as well, and see if we can find that article, because that'd be very interesting to see.
Okay, yeah, because that the way the writing team had did that video made it seem as if this was our last year. And the urgency that was put in this magazine, in the comments. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this is BS. By then, November 2017 is November 2017 is when I saw the Royal Commission. By January, I was angry because I was sitting up here feeling like I was living a lie. My head was spinning. And then I'm sitting up here contemplating, I'm getting out of here. I'm getting out of here. I'm disassociating. That's what I kept telling myself. And, so I was just angry at this point, of all these lies. And so, I did, 2018, I'm completely woke by this time. And so I'm just trying to figure out, because when you wake up, you try to tell people things. I'm trying to set little doubts in my dad's head. And I didn't even told him about the Royal Commission, because I wanted him to go to YouTube and watch it, but he ignored me because he didn't want no part of it. And then I tried to tell different people at the hall, oh, this stuff is fake. I wanted to wake people up that I was close to. Then I could tell by one sister, the way she looked at me, I said, I need to back off, because she looked at me like, what's wrong with Mona? And then I said, you can't wake people. That's, this is before I saw JT and Lady C video about not waking people up, let them wake up on their own. So then I was like, oh, I need to stop talking to people that I like in the hall, trying to advise them to go to YouTube. And so I left that alone. And then, what was it? During 2018, a lot went down, and because we lost some family members and everything. I lost my dog, and so I was involved in everything else. And I was like, 2019, I'm coming out of this place. And then that's when January the 1st, 2019, my brother killed himself. And so, that of course became a big thing, to deal with emotionally, because we as a family were grieving real hard. And so then let's see, right before, before Mother's Day, my mom had a major heart attack. And, so she ended up having to have triple bypass and everything. And so 29, it was like I couldn't be selfish at that point and just be like, oh, let me add to the stress of the family, along with my brother killing himself, my mom having a heart attack. Then my dad needed me even more so now to help him take care of my mom, you know. So that's what led to me just staying chemo, and but lo and behold, out of all of it, I became closer to my cop boyfriend. I just said, in 2017, when I woke up, I told him about it, and he was so happy. He said, I'm so happy you woke up. And then I started really just binge watching YouTube videos of different people and learning stuff. Then I started learning the history, and I started feeling okay with knowing this wasn't the truth anymore. I felt free, even though, how most chemo people feel like they're suffocated, but I felt free. And I think it's because I do live on my own. So outside of the witnesses, I have a normal life, and I was like, then the guilt went away of me dating a man that I love. We've been together forever,
Mm-hmm.
not married because of the organization. I finally got an engagement ring, so it took this many years to get an engagement ring because of my indecisiveness, me wanting him to become a witness, and me going back and forth. And so now we're engaged,
So
and
I've never got to meet him at all, but he sounds like a wonderful guy and so patient, so loving. And for him to wait all these years, he could have gone off and been like, you know what? This stuff's too crazy for me to stick around with. And he could have gone off and found somebody else and gotten married. And the fact that he stuck around really shows that he has a true unconditional love for you.
I even told him to leave me alone and go to other people. It was like, I did.
You cast your spell on him, Mona.
I don't know what I did, but because I was like, I knew my life was crazy, and I'm like, I told him when I finally woke up, and actually we have a better relationship now because I'm freer mentally. It's like I don't even care if we get caught going. So we go places locally now out to eat when COVID shut that down. But we can go places locally. I'm like, he comes over my house. He's like, do I need to hide my car? I'm like, no. I said, if they do, it's like, yeah, I'm chemo, but if they come to me with it, I don't care now.
So can I ask you one thing then in regards to him? So you got engaged. Well, actually, a couple things. When did you get engaged, by the way?
He gave me my ring. It was after my brother's death, so it was January 2019.
Okay. So, and I haven't known you that long, as a friend. So, congratulations. I know it's late, but congratulations. And so, have you guys been able to set a wedding date yet?
We have not set a wedding date. I want to run off and elope, as opposed to setting a wedding date.
Oh, that's fine.
Because the thing is that I'm not going to have any family members there for me getting married anyway.
Hey, as somebody who eloped, it's a great option.
Okay.
So,
that's what I'm going to do.
It's a lot less stressful.
Yeah. And that's what I was telling him, with having the small family I do here and them being Jehovah's Witnesses, there would be no support of us getting married. And then also, even if our parents did come, they would have to be questioned at the Kingdom Hall about how long you knew about this. And, I'm not putting them in a predicament where they have to answer any questions.
Well, you know what? I guarantee when you elope, if you wanted to broadcast it on Zoom, you'd have a lot of your fellow XJW friends join you on Zoom. So So I'm just throwing that out there because I know I'd be there.
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna do that. I will do that. And because it would be unfair to all of you guys who embraced me. Because when my brother killed himself during 2019, that's honestly the JW community is the one who I didn't want to. They're the ones who helped me because soon as I had announced it was a few XJWs who knew about me, but Sharon Tover, um, it was Sharon Tyson. She got married. She immediately reached out to me, and the words of support. It was so they flooded me with love. They wanted to know what happened. They people I had never known or talked to called me, and just hearing that I was an awakened Jehovah's Witness who had lost my baby brother to suicide. It was like they flooded me with love. I didn't get that from the Kingdom Hall. And I didn't think I was going to cry about my brother, but
No, go ahead.
I miss him too. But
no.
but it was just, it was just he was in so much pain, but I didn't go through his pain, and I skipped his story. But the SJW community, I had never witnessed so much love for someone that they didn't know, and they didn't care that I was still actively going to the hall or whatever. They they didn't discriminate toward me. It meant a lot. It really meant a lot.
Well, I guess you heard it here first, though. We're still going to support you, even through
Thank you.
your wedding and you're moving on. And I would be very proud to be a part of that. To even if it can only be through Zoom, we'll put the announcement out and get the word out there. I'm sure we'll have your Zoom flooded with people wanting to be there to support you.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you. You the Oprah Winfrey of the Zoom. You got me on.
Well, that's a first. I've never been Oprah before.
You know how she used to could bring emotions out of people. Well, that's my whole story.
Well, and thank you for sharing. I know these stories aren't easy to tell. It takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of bravery, and I applaud you for that, because
thank you.
There's people out there who can't tell their stories, who don't feel in a place that they can tell their stories, and that's okay. I'm not criticizing those people either. But for the ones who do and who can, I applaud you because of your courage and your bravery to stand out and to stand up for what's right, and for exposing what this organization has done to people and are continuing to do to people. And it's through stories like these that the world and even Jehovah's Witnesses will know of the abuses and problems going on. And unfortunately, it's a slow process, but a slow process is better than no process. So I want to thank you, Ramona, for
thank you, James,
coming on, for telling your story. I know it's going to help other people, especially in their waking up process.
I
And
hope so.
and for knowing that they're not alone in their thoughts and their feelings about this organization. And it's also one thing that I know has helped me a lot was also seeing stories from other religions too, like Mormonism and Scientology.
Mhm.
And people like those, like them, will also see your story and be like,
Mhm.
wow, my religion's not the only one that does this either. And
And I watch them too. I watch Scientology and Mormons.
mhm.
Yeah.
And so it's not just helping the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think that's very important because we need to have all those religions that are abusing their members and hiding it exposed.
Yeah.
And so thank you again for doing this, for first of all going on Riley's YouTube and sharing the first part, and then thank you for coming on here and filling in the middle of the story that we didn't get from there.
It was a big middle. That's the reason why we didn't get there the first time.
And that's okay. And and that's why there's video editing, and we can make multiple parts and all that, so that way we can get the full story out there.
Okay.
And I thank you for entrusting me to put this on my channel as well. I really do.
Thank you. And tell your beautiful mom I say hello. I love her.
I will tell her. Oh, and by the way, I'm gonna say something too real quick. Today, the day of recording this, which is June 6th, is my dad's birthday. So happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday.
So
happy birthday.
Special ending. I still gotta call him after this. Because like I said before, I woke up and we did this. So I gotta call him after this and say it to him in person. But then he'll see it on the video too.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's sweet.
So I want to shout that out real quick. Anyways, that's all I have for today, listeners. Thank you for viewing in. If you can, please hit the like button and subscribe, and feel free to share. And as always, thank you for watching.